Good evening and welcome to Sleepy Psychology. Tonight, as you settle under the quiet weight of your blanket, let your mind begin to drift, not away from thought, but into it, into that subtle rhythm of being half awake and half asleep, where thoughts blur and wander, and where the world outside slowly loosens its hold. This space, the twilight of consciousness, is where our story begins. It's a place Sigmund Freud spent his life exploring, not in dreams alone, but in the very architecture of what it means to be human. The unconscious mind, that vast, silent ocean beneath our awareness, is what Freud called the true reality of the psyche. He believed that what we call the self is only a small island, surrounded by an invisible sea of memories, desires, fears, and impulses that whisper to us when the world grows quiet as you listen. You may find yourself drifting deeper, not away from understanding, but toward a softer kind of learning. There's no rush. The mind takes its time to unfold. Take a slow breath in and exhale slowly. Feel the gentle rhythm of your own heartbeat. That steady pulse is the same rhythm that guided Freud's fascination, the rhythm between consciousness and the unseen forces beneath it. Freud was not the first to imagine a hidden mind. Ancient philosophers spoke of inner shadows, of unseen motives and spirits moving within us. But Freud gave that mystery a structure, a language, and a name. He believed that every slip of the tongue, every dream, every fear, every attraction was a message from something deeper than logic, deeper than reason. He called it the unconscious dot to him. The unconscious wasn't evil, nor random. It was simply human. It held everything we had ever been unable to face, everything we had loved and lost, everything we had desired but denied. It was the silent partner in every decision we made, and who we might yet be. Imagine your mind as a calm lake at night. The surface smooth and shimmering is your consciousness. You see reflections, the stars above the moon, the soft movement of the world, but below that, still water is depth, unseen yet alive. There are stories sleeping down there. Dreams half remembered, feelings you once had but let fade away, and from time to time, something rises, a thought, a feeling, a sudden memory breaking the surface for a moment before drifting back into silence. That's how Freud imagined the unconscious, not as a place of darkness, but of depth, a place that constantly moves beneath awareness. As you listen, you may notice your body relaxing, your shoulders lowering, your breath deepening. You are, in this moment, experiencing what Freud might call a gentle surrender of the ego, the mind allowing the unconscious to whisper. He believed that our dreams, especially, were the royal road to this hidden world. When the conscious mind sleeps, the unconscious finally speaks, not in words, but in symbols and stories. A house might represent the self. A journey might symbolize growth. A locked door could mean a secret or a fear. Freud's gift was to suggest that nothing in the mind is meaningless. Even our dreams of nonsense carry the quiet weight of meaning. But before we travel deeper into his theories, let's stay here in this beginning space and rest in the feeling of curiosity itself. Freud's work often begins with wonder. He did not start with answers. He began with listening to his patients, listening to his own dreams, listening to the quiet voice that asked, why do we think, feel, and dream the way we do? Perhaps you've asked yourself similar questions in the moments before sleep, when thoughts feel softer, when memories drift closer. Maybe you felt an emotion you couldn't explain, or remembered something small that carried a weight far greater than you expected. That's the unconscious, always present, always whispering just below the noise of day. Take another deep breath. Inhale through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Let the air move slowly through you, as if the breath itself were a tide between the conscious and the unconscious. Now imagine the thoughts of your day slowly fading, one by one, as the deeper mind begins to surface. This is where Freud's fascination lies. Not in the waking mind that plans and reasons, but in the dreamer that lives beneath it. He once said, "The voice of the unconscious is gentle, but it will not rest until it is heard." That's why, perhaps, our dreams wake us with emotions we can't name, or with stories that feel strangely familiar. It's the unconscious speaking, asking us to listen. Freud believed that to understand ourselves, we must learn to listen to what the mind hides, not to silence it, not to conquer it, but to integrate it, to bring into harmony what we know and what we feel. And so tonight, as you listen, imagine this journey not as a lecture, but as a gentle exploration. We are walking together along the shoreline of the mind, hearing the waves of thought, feeling the soft sand of awareness beneath our feet. The ocean before us is vast and quiet. It has no map, no edges, no urgency. Here, the mind rests. Here, Freud's theory becomes less an idea and more a feeling. The feeling of knowing that within you, there is more than thought, more than reason, more than words. Soon, we'll begin to explore what the unconscious truly is, the hidden mechanisms that shape our dreams, our slips, and our quietest emotions. But for now, let your eyelids grow heavier. Let the world outside your room fade into softness. You are safe here. You are learning gently. You are entering the realm Freud spent his life trying to describe, the mysterious space between waking and sleep, between the seen and the unseen, between who we think we are and who we might yet be. Imagine yourself lying in a peaceful room where the hum of the world fades into a soft lull. In this space, we explore the silent architecture of your mind, a quiet inner cathedral built of thought, impulse, and awareness. Freud imagined the psyche as three guiding forces: the ID, the ego, and the super. They are not enemies but companions in the eternal dream of being human. The ID is the whisper beneath awareness, instinctual, raw, and ancient. It is the voice that seeks comfort, the hunger for warmth, the pulse that says, "I want." When you were a child, the ID spoke freely. It wanted the world, and it asked without hesitation. The ID is not cruel or selfish. It is pure energy, the will to feel alive. As you breathe slowly, picture the id as a river flowing deep underground. It moves without thought or judgment, shaping your desires and dreams. It is the night of the mind, dark, boundless, and wild, yet it holds the spark of every creation. Freud believed that the unconscious speaks through this part of us, translating its needs into our fantasies, our slips of the tongue, and even our laughter. Above the river of the ID, you find the ego, a bridge of light. The ego stands between instinct and reality, between the dream and the day. It is the voice that says, "Not yet," or "Wait," or "How can we make this real?" The ego does not suppress the ID. It listens, it negotiates, and it helps us move through the waking world with grace. In Freud's vision, the ego was the pilot of the mind, not all-powerful but necessary to steer the vessel through both storm and stillness. You may imagine the ego as the quiet guardian sitting at the edge of consciousness, looking both inward and outward. It feels the tides of desire from below and the weight of the world from above. And still, it keeps the balance. It tells stories that make sense of the chaos, weaving meaning from the noise. Every choice, every pause, every patient breath, all are acts of the ego in harmony. And then, rising softly above the bridge, stands the superego, the inner guide. It is formed from lessons, voices, and the gentle echoes of those who raised us. The superego reminds us of what is right, what is kind, what is worth striving for. It is not merely a moral compass, but also a whisper of conscience, a lullaby from our shared humanity. The superego watches the ego and the id with quiet care. Sometimes it scolds, sometimes it comforts, but always it seeks peace. Freud saw it as the internalized parent, the voice that once came from others and now lives within. In the soft quiet of night, it may speak as a memory, a teacher's tone, a parent's warmth, or a lover's wish for your well-being. Together, the id, ego, and superego form the architecture of your mind. They are the unseen symphony behind your thoughts. One yearning, one balancing, one guiding. None can exist without the others. Even when you sleep, they continue their silent conversation, shaping your dreams, guarding your heart. Now, take a breath. As you exhale, imagine all three. The id as a deep river, the ego as a calm bridge, and the superego as a gentle star above, aligned in quiet harmony. The currents of your unconscious flow softly, watched over by awareness and wisdom. This is Freud's inner world, dynamic, mysterious, and endlessly human. And as we drift deeper into this exploration, remember, understanding your mind is not about control. It is about compassion. When you listen to the hidden voices within you, you begin to meet yourself, the dreamer, the thinker, and the moral soul, resting together beneath the same sky. Imagine yourself resting in a quiet room, the air still and soft. The edges of the world blur, and your thoughts begin to drift. Between wakefulness and sleep lies a hidden doorway, a passage that Sigmund Freud called the royal road to the unconscious. It is through dreams, he believed, that the mind whispers its truest secrets. When we dream, the conscious guard relaxes. Logic fades, time bends, and impossible things feel natural. In that gentle chaos, Freud saw meaning, symbols sent by the hidden mind, each carrying a fragment of desire, memory, or fear. He did not think dreams were nonsense. To him, they were coded messages from the deepest layers of the self. Take a slow breath. Imagine a dream you once had. Maybe it was strange or beautiful, or it left a lingering feeling you couldn't explain. Freud believed that every dream had two layers: the manifest content, which is what you remember upon waking, and the latent content, which is the true message beneath the imagery. The manifest content is like a poem written in symbols. You may see a door, a stranger, a fall, a flight, but each of these, Freud said, hides an emotional truth. The latent content is that hidden truth, the unspoken wish or thought disguised by the dream's surface. To understand this, Freud developed a method he called dream analysis, where the dreamer gently followed their own associations. If someone dreamt of climbing a hill, he would ask, "What comes to mind when you think of climbing?" The answer might lead to ambition, struggle, or longing. The dream's meaning, he believed, unfolded not in symbols alone, but in the emotions attached to them. Dreams, for Freud, were the mind's way of fulfilling wishes too difficult to face while awake. Sometimes, those wishes were simple: to be loved, to be safe, to be free. Other times, they were complex or forbidden, buried deep in the unconscious. During sleep, those buried desires found expression, wrapped in metaphor, so the ego, the conscious self, would not resist. He called this process dream work, the hidden craftsmanship of the mind. It transforms raw thoughts into the symbolic language of dreams through several processes: condensation, where multiple ideas merge into one image; displacement, where emotion shifts from one thing to another; symbolization, where a concrete image stands in for an abstract idea; secondary revision, where the dream story is tidied up to make sense to the waking mind. Think of it as your mind's nightly art form, painting truth in disguise, shaping emotion into story. Freud compared dreams to puzzles that can be solved, but also to art that can be felt. Each night, your unconscious becomes an artist, using the canvas of sleep to express what daylight cannot. As you listen now, your own thoughts may begin to drift like mist across a calm lake. Perhaps a fragment of a dream returns, a face, a room, a sky. You don't need to analyze it, only to notice it. In noticing, you're already closer to your own unconscious, the quiet realm that Freud sought to understand. He once said that dreams are the guardians of sleep protectors, not intruders. They keep us resting by disguising our inner tensions in fantasy. Rather than waking us with anxiety, they lull us deeper, weaving meaning into imagery. Even a nightmare, in Freud's eyes, was not the enemy of sleep, but a message that had grown too strong to hide. To Freud, the dream was both a confession and a cure. By revealing hidden emotions, it allowed healing to begin. And so he invited his patients to share their dreams, not as riddles to solve, but as stories of the soul, small windows into the vast unconscious beneath. You might wonder, as Freud did, what your mind is saying in the language of dreams. Are your fears being soothed? Are your hopes being rehearsed in secret? Perhaps your mind is trying to balance what you suppress with what you long for. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself in a dream, any dream. Let the images rise softly. Maybe you are walking through a forest where the air glows faintly with memory. Perhaps you're speaking with someone you've never met, yet you feel you know them. In this space, the rules of the waking world dissolve, and your inner world takes form. Freud found comfort in this mystery. To him, dreams were evidence that the unconscious is alive, a living, breathing part of you that works even as you rest. In every dream, the self is whispering to itself, saying, I remember, I desire, I heal. But Freud also knew that dreams are fragile things. When you wake, they scatter like dust in sunlight. To catch their meaning, one must hold them gently, without force. Write them down, he advised, before the conscious mind sweeps them away. Each dream, he believed, is a clue, not just about one night's sleep, but about who we are becoming. The images may change, but the feelings remain, waiting to be understood. And so, as your breath slows, imagine yourself at the edge of your own unconscious. You stand before a vast ocean. Each wave is a thought, each ripple a dream. You don't need to dive in. Just listen. The water speaks softly of things you know, things you've forgotten, and things you've yet to feel. This, Freud would say, is the royal road, not to knowledge alone, but to connection. For within your dreams lives the oldest part of you, still trying to speak, still trying to love, still trying to rest. As you settle deeper into stillness, your breath steady and calm, imagine your mind as a quiet fortress, Inside, thoughts drift like candlelight, and emotions rise and fall like gentle tides. But not all feelings come softly. Sometimes, the unconscious sends forward emotions that feel too sharp: fear, guilt, shame, or longing. To protect itself, the mind raises soft shields, what Freud called defense mechanisms. These defenses are not flaws. They are kindnesses from the mind to itself. They are the ways the psyche preserves peace, allowing you to sleep, to function, and to love even when life feels too heavy to bear. Freud first noticed these defenses while observing how people explained their behaviors and feelings. Sometimes, he realized, we tell stories not to deceive others, but to make sense of ourselves. The truth may be too uncomfortable to face, so the mind reshapes it, softens it, and hides it in ways that feel safe. In this, the mind acts not as a liar, but as a caretaker. One of the most common defenses is repression, the quiet act of pushing painful thoughts out of awareness. It's as if the mind gently tucks away what it cannot yet handle. Those memories or impulses do not disappear. They rest in the unconscious, waiting until the psyche is ready to face them. Freud saw repression as the foundation of all other defenses, the original guardian of inner peace. Then there is denial, the refusal to see what is too distressing. In denial, the mind closes its eyes, saying, "Not now." This can seem like avoidance, but it is often a pause, a moment of mercy, giving the self time to breathe before accepting the truth. In small doses, denial allows healing to unfold slowly. Projection is another subtle defense. When an emotion feels too difficult to accept within ourselves, we may see it in others instead. For instance, anger, envy, or guilt might be easier to recognize outside than inside. The mind externalizes what it cannot bear to acknowledge, hoping to make it less personal, less painful. There is also displacement, where feelings meant for one thing are redirected toward something safer. A person frustrated at work might come home and feel sudden irritation toward a harmless object or a loved one. The emotion finds a new target, not out of cruelty, but as a way to release what would otherwise stay trapped. Rationalization is the defense of logic, the mind's effort to make uncomfortable feelings seem reasonable. It's the soothing voice that says, "It happened for a reason," or "I didn't really want that anyway." The emotion beneath still exists, but by wrapping it in reason, the mind gives itself room to recover. Then comes reaction formation, the curious defense where we express the opposite of what we feel. Someone who feels anger may act overly kind. Someone who feels doubt may appear overly certain. The mind disguises pain with its mirror image, a way of keeping the true feelings safely hidden. Another is sublimation, one Freud admired. It is the art of turning raw emotion into creation. Anger becomes passion for justice. Sadness becomes music. Desire becomes art. In sublimation, the unconscious transforms what could destroy into something that heals. It is the highest and most creative of all defenses. Regression takes us backward to an earlier, simpler state. Under stress, adults may seek comfort in childlike behaviors, curling under a blanket, craving reassurance, or escaping into fantasy. The mind retreats, not out of weakness, but to remember how it once felt safe. Finally, there is identification, where we borrow traits or ideals from someone we admire or fear. By becoming like them, we feel protected. It is how children learn, how societies grow, and how the self continues to evolve. Even imitation can be an unconscious wish for strength. Together, these mechanisms form an invisible network of care, weighs the unconscious, shelters the conscious mind. Freud believed that they are neither good nor bad. They become harmful only when overused. A well-balanced psyche uses defenses like gentle tides, rising when needed, receding when peace returns. As you listen, notice how these defenses may move within you. Perhaps you've rationalized pain, or projected fear, or found refuge in art. These are all quiet acts of survival, signs of a mind doing its best to remain whole. Freud's insight reminds us that even the hidden parts of our psychology work in service of healing. The mind, he thought, is not an enemy to be conquered, but a companion to be understood. It guards you even when you do not notice. So, as your body softens and your thoughts drift, imagine your defenses as gentle hands, not walls, but waves. They rise when the storm comes and lower when the sun returns. They are the mind's quiet love for itself. As you drift deeper into thought, imagine the subtle ways the unconscious speaks, not through dreams this time, but through the small moments of daily life. Freud believed that our hidden mind is never truly silent. It murmurs beneath the surface, shaping words, gestures, and choices in ways we hardly notice. Even in laughter, in slips of the tongue, or in things forgotten, the unconscious quietly leaves its fingerprints. These moments, Freud said, are not accidents. They are the psyche's gentle way of revealing what lies beneath. Consider the simple act of a Freudian slip, a word spoken by mistake. You might mean to say one thing, but another comes out, often carrying a truth you didn't intend to share. A forgotten name, a misplaced object, an unplanned word, all, Freud suggested, could be small windows into the unconscious. Behind the slip may live a wish, a fear, or a memory, quietly finding a way to be heard. You might remember a time when you called someone by the wrong name, perhaps one tied to emotion or memory. Freud would have seen this not as coincidence, but as meaning, a signal that the unconscious had momentarily stepped into the light. The mind, after all, is layered. Sometimes the hidden self borrows the voice of the waking one. Forgetting, too fascinated Freud. When we forget a name, an appointment, or a word, it often seems random. But Freud believed forgetting can be motivated, that we forget not because we cannot remember, but because we do not wish to. The unconscious may push away thoughts it finds uncomfortable, gently turning the mind's gaze elsewhere. What feels like a failure of memory can sometimes be a quiet act of protection. He called these moments peripraxes, small errors that reveal large truths. They are the mind's whispers, subtle reminders that our conscious control is not absolute. Beneath awareness, the unconscious moves like a current beneath still water, shaping what rises to the surface. Freud often noted how our instincts, the ancient drives of life and survival, mingle with these unconscious expressions. We are guided by Eros, the life instinct, which seeks love, connection, and creation, and by Thanatos, the death instinct, which leans toward rest, stillness, and the return to peace. Even in the simplest of choices, these forces dance in balance. When you laugh, when you hesitate, when you forget, your unconscious is speaking. It reminds you that the self is not one voice but many, harmonizing in layers of awareness. Freud saw this not as chaos but as beauty, proof that the mind is alive, always in motion, always protecting and revealing at once. So, as you rest now, Let this thought drift through you. The unconscious is not a dark enemy, but a companion that shapes your life in gentle, unseen ways. Each slip, each forgotten word, each passing impulse, they are all notes in the same quiet song. The song of your inner self, still singing, even as you fall asleep. Before the mind learns to reason, before words shape our thoughts, there is feeling, pure, raw, and unfiltered. Freud believed that it is in this earliest stage of life that the foundations of the unconscious are laid. Childhood, he suggested, is not simply a period we outgrow. It is the blueprint of our inner world, quietly influencing how we love, fear, and dream for the rest of our lives. In the eyes of an infant, the world is immense and undefined. Needs are immediate. Comfort and distress arrive in waves, shaping the first impressions of safety, love, and trust. Each experience, every soothing touch or moment of absence, leaves an imprint on the psyche. These imprints become the threads from which the unconscious is woven. Freud proposed that the child's mind is driven by instinct, by what he called the ID, the seat of primal desire. The infant seeks pleasure and avoids pain, guided only by the rhythm of want and satisfaction. Over time, as parents and society impose rules, a new part of the mind begins to form. The ego, learning patience, learning to wait, and eventually, through guidance, correction, and imitation, the superego emerges, the quiet voice of morality and conscience. Together, these forces shape the personality, each influenced by the echoes of childhood. Freud saw the unconscious as a kind of storage, room for the emotional residue of growing up. Moments of joy are remembered, but moments of fear or frustration are often pushed below awareness, too painful for a young mind to process. Yet these buried feelings do not vanish. They continue to live within us, guiding our reactions long after childhood has passed. Consider how certain situations stir emotions that seem larger than the moment. A tone of voice that triggers sadness, a gesture that sparks irritation or longing. Often, these are echoes from the past, the unconscious revisiting unfinished stories. The adult reacts, but the child within responds. Freud's insight was not meant to blame childhood, but to reveal its power. He believed that understanding these early imprints allows us to live more freely. By recognizing how the past shapes the present, we can release patterns that no longer serve us. Awareness brings compassion, not only for ourselves, but for those who shaped us in therapy. Freud often encouraged patients to speak freely, to let memories drift into words without censorship. Through this gentle unraveling, childhood scenes would surface, moments forgotten, yet still alive beneath the surface. And with each recollection came relief, as if the unconscious had been waiting to be heard. Childhood, in Freud's view, is both the seed and the soil of the mind. It holds our beginnings, the tender, unguarded parts of who we are. To explore it is not to dwell in the past, but to understand the architecture of the self. So as you rest now, imagine the quiet unfolding of your own beginnings, the sensations, voices, and dreams that once formed your earliest world. Beneath your waking mind, those memories still hum softly, shaping your feelings, your choices, your sleep. The unconscious remembers what the mind forgets, and in that remembering, we find both mystery and meaning. Imagine your mind as a vast theater, where every thought, memory, and feeling plays its role. Yet, behind the curtain, there are scenes that never reach the stage, parts of yourself hidden, not by accident, but by design. Freud called this process repression, the act of pushing away thoughts and emotions that the conscious mind finds too distressing to face. Repression, he believed, is one of the mind's most powerful defenses. It shields us from pain, guilt, and fear by sending those experiences into the depths of the unconscious. There, they remain unseen but not inactive, influencing moods, choices, and even dreams. What is forgotten is not gone. It simply waits beneath awareness, shaping us in silence. Freud discovered repression through his work with patients who suffered from hysteria and anxiety. Many of them had no memory of the events that seemed to cause their distress. Yet, when he guided them gently through free association or hypnosis, forgotten memories surfaced, often with intense emotion. These moments revealed that the unconscious mind does not forget. It merely conceals. But repression is not always an enemy. Freud saw it as a necessary safeguard, a way for the psyche to maintain balance. Without it, the flood of raw emotion and instinct might overwhelm us. The problem arises when repression grows too strong, cutting us off from parts of ourselves that need acknowledgement and healing. This is where resistance comes in, when Freud's patients began to approach the truth of their repressed memories. They often resisted by changing the subject, forgetting appointments, or feeling sudden fatigue. Resistance, Freud realized, was not stubbornness but protection. The mind defends itself from pain, even as it yearns to be free of it. In psychoanalysis, uncovering repressed material is a delicate process. Freud compared it to archaeology, gently brushing away layers of sand to reveal something buried but intact. The goal is not to destroy repression, but to understand it, allowing what was once hidden to find peaceful expression. Repression and resistance are twin forces, one hides, the other guards, yet both serve the same purpose, to preserve the integrity of the self. They remind us that the unconscious is not a battlefield of conflict alone, but also a sanctuary of protection. As you listen now, think of your own mind, how it may quietly protect you from what you are not yet ready to face. There is kindness in that protection. Over time, as trust grows between the conscious and the unconscious, what is buried may rise softly into the light. So rest in the knowledge that not every silence is empty, and not every forgetting is loss. Sometimes the mind simply waits, patient and kind, until you are ready to remember. Freud often described the mind as a dynamic system, three forces constantly in motion, shaping thought, emotion, and behavior. These forces, the ID, the ego, and the superego, form the structure of the psyche. Each plays its own role, balancing instinct, reason, and morality in the quiet theater of the unconscious. At the foundation lies the ID, the most primitive part of the mind. It is the birthplace of instinct, the source of desire, hunger, and pleasure. The ID operates on what Freud called the pleasure principle, demanding immediate satisfaction of needs without concern for consequence or logic. It is impulsive, childlike, and timeless. When you feel a surge of craving, a flash of anger, or an unfiltered urge, that is the ID speaking, the raw voice of the unconscious. Above it stands the ego, the mediator between desire and reality. The ego develops as we grow and learn to navigate the world. It follows the reality principle, understanding that not all wishes can be fulfilled immediately. The ego listens to the ID's demands, but tempers them with patience and reason. It plans, negotiates, and compromises, finding realistic ways to meet our needs while keeping us safe. And then there is the superego, the moral compass of the mind. It forms from internalized values, teachings, and ideals, the voices of parents, culture, and conscience. The superego strives for perfection, judging the ego's actions and producing feelings of pride or guilt. Where the ID says, "I want," the superego says, "You must not," and the ego stands between them. Seeking peace, Freud imagined these three parts not as separate entities, but as energies in constant conversation. The ID pushes for pleasure, the superego pulls toward morality, and the ego balances between them, like a careful conductor guiding a delicate symphony. When harmony is achieved, the self feels stable and calm. When conflict arises, anxiety follows a signal that the balance has been disturbed. Freud's patients often struggled with this inner conflict. A person might desire something forbidden by their values, or feel guilt for impulses they cannot control. Through therapy, Freud sought to help them recognize these forces, not to silence them, but to understand them. Awareness, he believed, brings freedom. In everyday life, you can sense these three voices. When you resist a temptation, when you justify a choice, or when you feel guilt after an action, these are the echoes of the id, ego, and superego speaking within you. The conversation is eternal, shaping who you are and how you live. As you settle deeper into rest, imagine these three parts not as rivals, but as companions. The ID's energy gives you passion and life. The superego gives you purpose and conscience, and the ego holds them together in gentle balance. Together, they form the quiet harmony that is your mind, the orchestra that plays softly as you drift into sleep. As the night deepens, imagine the mind quietly protecting itself, not with walls or weapons, but with gentle, invisible movements of thought. Freud and his followers called these movements defense mechanisms, the mind's way of keeping us safe from pain, guilt, and anxiety. They are not signs of weakness, but of balance, preserving our sense of stability when the world or the self feels too heavy. Defense mechanisms are unconscious. They happen automatically, often without our awareness. They are the psyche's silent guardians, softening the edges of experience so we can live and adapt. While they protect us, they can also distort reality, shaping how we see others and ourselves. One of the most common defenses is repression, which you've already encountered. It pushes distressing thoughts into the unconscious, keeping them out of awareness. Yet others are more subtle layers of protection that shape the way we respond to the emotional weight of life. Consider denial, the refusal to accept something painful or real. It is the mind's temporary shield against shock, a pause that allows us to process grief slowly. Projection, on the other hand, transfers what we dislike in ourselves onto others. When someone irritates us for being selfish or judgmental, it may be our own hidden feelings reflected back. Then there is rationalization, the art of justifying our actions with logic, even when the real reasons lie deeper. It comforts the ego, making uncomfortable truths easier to hold. Displacement redirects emotion from its true source toward something safer. A person angry at their boss may scold a loved one instead, not out of malice, but because the mind seeks relief without confrontation. Regression is the return to an earlier, simpler way of coping. Under stress, an adult might act childlike, seeking comfort or reassurance. It's a return to a time when life felt safe and care was certain. Sublimation, perhaps the most mature defense, transforms raw impulse into creativity or purpose. The artist channels longing into art. The athlete channels aggression into strength. Here, the unconscious becomes a wellspring of beauty. Freud's student, Anna Freud, expanded on these ideas, describing defense mechanisms as vital tools of emotional survival. Without them, we would face the full force of every emotion unfiltered, a burden too great for the conscious mind. But when defenses become too rigid or automatic, they can imprison rather than protect, keeping us from genuine connection and growth. The goal, Freud believed, was not to destroy these defenses, but to recognize them. Awareness turns armor into understanding. By seeing how we protect ourselves, we can learn to soften, to face truth with gentleness rather than fear. As you drift further into calm, think of your own mind's quiet defenses. They are not enemies, they are helpers, shaped by experience, working tirelessly to keep you whole. In time, you may thank them and gently let them rest, as your thoughts ease into peace. Beneath the surface of awareness, where logic loosens and emotion flows freely, lies a wellspring of creativity. Freud believed that the unconscious is not only a vault of repressed memories and desires, it is also the birthplace of art, invention, and inspiration. Within its depths, the forces that once caused conflict can transform into beauty, meaning, and imagination. In this view, the artist and the dreamer share a secret kinship. Both reach into the same hidden reservoir, drawing out images and feelings the conscious mind alone could never create. What we call creativity, Freud suggested, is the unconscious speaking in symbols, just as it does in dreams. When an artist paints, when a writer composes, or when a musician finds a melody that seems to come from nowhere, it may be the unconscious offering a gift. The mind releases what has been stored, desires, fears, fragments of memory, and shapes them into something that can be seen and shared. Creation, then, becomes a kind of healing, a dialogue between what is hidden and what is known. Freud often compared this process to sublimation, one of the most refined defense mechanisms. Sublimation takes raw instinct, desire, aggression, longing, and redirects it toward art, study, or service. It transforms impulse into expression. Through this process, what was once unconscious finds voice, not in destruction, but in creation. He saw this not only in artists, but in everyone. The builder who shapes a home, the parent who nurtures a child, the thinker who dreams of new ideas. All are in their own way, translating unconscious energy into form. We all create, knowingly or not, from the same hidden place. Consider how ideas sometimes appear when you are not trying in the shower, on a walk, as you fall asleep. The conscious mind quiets, and in that stillness, the unconscious begins to speak. It is the mind's natural rhythm to think deeply only when it feels safe to wander. Freud believed that this relationship between the unconscious and creativity explains why art often touches us so deeply. A poem, a painting, or a song resonates because it reflects something universal, a truth that lives within all of us, even if we cannot name it. When we encounter art, we recognize ourselves in it. It is the unconscious meeting itself, across time and space. So as you listen and rest, remember this: your imagination is not separate from your unconscious. It is its voice in daylight. Every image, every dream, every spark of wonder is a message from within, a reminder that even in silence, your mind is endlessly creating. Let that thought settle gently as you breathe. Your unconscious is not only a keeper of secrets, It is a well of endless creativity, waiting to rise softly, like inspiration in the dark. As the night deepens and the mind drifts further from waking thought, dreams begin to unfold, soft, strange, and sometimes profound. For Freud's dreams were not meaningless. They were messages from the unconscious, whispered in the language of symbols. Each dream, no matter how fragmented or odd, was a clue to the hidden life within us. He called dreams the royal road to the unconscious. Through them, he believed we could glimpse the desires and emotions we have long kept buried. In waking life, these feelings are disguised, edited, or ignored. But in dreams, they take on shape and voice, weaving stories that express what the waking mind cannot say. Freud's interpretation of dreams was not simply an intellectual exercise, it was a form of healing. By understanding the meaning behind a dream, one could uncover the inner conflicts that cause anxiety or sadness. The dream then became a mirror. It reflected what the conscious mind refused to see, offering a gentle opportunity for awareness and release. Imagine the mind as a vast theater. The conscious self sits in the audience, watching, while the unconscious directs scenes behind the curtain. Each night, when we sleep, that curtain lifts. Forgotten feelings step onto the stage, dressed in symbols and stories. Some scenes are joyful, others are troubling, but all are honest. Dreams do not lie, they reveal. Freud often observed that recurring dreams signal something unresolved, a door that won't open, a fall without end, a voice you cannot reach. These images, he believed, point toward repressed emotions or unspoken needs. They persist until they are heard, and when they are understood, the dream fades, its message delivered. Yet not all dreams are heavy with conflict. Many are restorative, quiet, wandering journeys through memory, imagination, or wish. Freud saw in them the psyche's way of restoring balance. Just as the body heals in rest, so does the mind heal in dreaming. Even the simple act of remembering a dream can be a bridge between the conscious and unconscious. When you wake and reflect on what you've seen, a face, a landscape, a feeling, you invite your deeper self into awareness. It is a dialogue of silence, one that needs no words. Tonight, as you rest, consider that your dreams are not random. They are the gentle expressions of a mind seeking harmony. They carry the whispers of your past, the symbols of your hopes, and the music of your inner life. In them, your unconscious speaks softly, not to trouble you, but to guide you. And so, as you drift toward sleep, know that each dream that rises is a message from within. A reminder that beneath thought and memory, your soul is always reaching for peace. As the journey through the unconscious nears its end, Freud reminds us that understanding what lies beneath awareness is only the beginning. True healing comes not from uncovering the unconscious alone, but from learning to live with it, to integrate its wisdom into the fabric of daily life. The unconscious is not an enemy to conquer or a shadow to banish. It is a part of who we are, ancient, emotional, instinctive, and endlessly creative. When we acknowledge it, we become whole. When we ignore it, we fracture. Freud believed that harmony arises when the conscious and unconscious learn to coexist, each informing the other in quiet dialogue. This process of integration requires patience and compassion. It asks us to listen, not with judgment, but with curiosity. The fears that dwell in the unconscious are not there to harm us. They are signals of where we have been wounded or unheard. By facing them, we do not fall into darkness. We illuminate it. To live with the unconscious is to live more fully awake. It means recognizing the subtle ways it moves through our lives, in slips of the tongue, sudden emotions, spontaneous ideas, and the pull of dreams. These are not accidents. They are the unconscious reaching out, reminding us of its presence. When you notice these moments, a feeling that arrives without cause, a memory that surfaces out of nowhere, pause and breathe. Ask gently, what part of me is speaking right now? In that question lies awareness, and in awareness, transformation. Freud understood that self-knowledge is not a destination, but a lifelong unfolding. The unconscious will always hold mysteries beyond our reach, and that is part of its beauty. We are not meant to fully control it, only to dance with it, to move between knowing and not knowing with grace. In time, this acceptance brings peace. The mind grows quieter, the heart softer. Life feels more authentic because it flows from a deeper source. We become less bound by fear and more open to wonder. So as this journey draws to a close, rest in the awareness that your unconscious is not separate from you. It is you whispering from the depths, shaping your thoughts, dreams, and desires. Each night when you sleep, it speaks. Each morning when you wake, it waits. Always guiding, always creating. Let that truth comfort you. The unconscious is not something to solve, but something to honor. A reminder that beneath the surface of thought, your soul is quietly alive, dreaming even as you wake. The night has carried us deep into the quiet places of the mind through dreams, symbols, and the vast ocean of the unconscious. As you rest here at the edge of awareness, take a moment to breathe and feel the stillness that follows understanding. Freud's theory of the unconscious was more than an idea. It was an invitation to explore what lies beneath the surface of thought, to listen to the whispers of emotion, and to honor the hidden parts of ourselves. He believed that in knowing our inner world, we awaken to our fullest humanity. You have journeyed through memories, desires, defense mechanisms, and dreams, all the ways the unconscious speaks. Now, as you drift towards sleep, allow those lessons to settle softly. The mind, having explored its depths, returns to rest, wiser, calmer, whole. Remember, the unconscious is not a dark abyss to fear, but a source of healing and imagination. It breathes beneath your every thought, shaping the rhythm of your life in silence. Every dream you have, every sudden insight or emotion, each is the unconscious, reminding you that you are more than what you know. So tonight, as your breathing slows and your body grows light, let go of all effort. Let your conscious mind slip gently into the embrace of the unseen. There is nothing to fix, nothing to chase, only stillness and the quiet hum of your inner self. Sleep deeply, knowing that your unconscious, the same mysterious force Freud devoted his life to understanding, watches tenderly within you. It will guide your dreams, nurture your rest, and carry you into the dawn renewed. Good night, dreamer. The mind sleeps, but the soul remembers.